Emma Lenny Beye Onile Loko. Esiku Dede Asikoi. Hello everyone. It's Adéfúnnké again. I hope your day is going well. I'm sorry I won't appear in this video because I have some technical difficulties since Wednesday. I've been trying to make my usual software work and it isn't. So until that is resolved, I suppose this would be the new way, except I find an alternative. So I hope you don't mind. Today I'd like to talk about the word Iyaafin. To start with, I like to stress that it is very important for us to start to look at Yoruba words as what they really are, instead of just slapping English translations or French translations or whatever translations we have onto them and thinking of them with an English mindset. So that is what people typically do. You take eshe, you just slap the next English statement to it and you say, oh, it means thank you, when it really doesn't mean thank you. I've explained what it means at some point in this series. You take the word aje and you just slap the European witch onto that and you say it means witch. You're doing yourself a great disservice when you don't look at what words mean in and of themselves. It's really not fair to the culture. It's really not, most importantly, it's not fair to your own self to rob yourself of that part of your own heritage when you do that. Ìyáàfin is this word, Iyaafin, and people often take it and translate it to Mrs. or Madam when it's not. There are cases where, of course, you have to translate the Yoruba. I'm speaking English, for goodness sakes. You have to translate it at some point, whether to communicate or to teach or whatever. But if one takes an English word and considers it the closest, even if it's not perfect, it's not perfectly equivalent, one should still be very mindful of what that word is in and of itself, what that Yoruba word is in and of itself prior to translation. Even if transliteration cannot be done, prior to translation, one should still be aware of what it says. One should still be conscious of what it is. In many cases, when you are conscious of what words are, in and of themselves, you find it really difficult to just take an English word and slap it onto that and say, oh, that's the meaning, that's what it means. Don't rob your own self of your heritage. Don't just do that to words. Be quite mindful. Even if you have to translate and, the English word you're using is the closest that you can find, still be mindful of the words that combine to make that one word, or the central verb in that word. That would give you a clearer picture of what our ancestors thought of it, and what they still think of it. Ìyáàfin, when you break the word into not even syllables, even the words that make up that one word, you would be able to immediately tell that it can't possibly be Madam or Mrs. Iya and Àfin are the two words that combine to give you the word Ìyáàfin. If you know what Iya is and you know what Àfin is, you can already tell. You can already tell that it can't be Mrs. or Madam. It's something else. Ìyáàfin. Iya, often translated as mother, doesn't really have to be. It's not limited to somebody who has birthed children. It's what mothers or what mother figures are typically called. If you look at the central verb in that word, it is ya. Ya is often used in one sense. It could be borrow or to take from with the intention of returning. That's one sense. In another sense, it would be like in the sense of, something being ready. If you say otiya, you're saying it is time, sort of implying that you're ready to move on with whatever the next step is. Sometimes it is early. So if you say, oh my yayi, you're saying you guys came early. But in this sense, the ya there is in the hasting sense. somebody who sort of hastens, somebody who hearkens anyway, you know. In the Yoruba culture, if you look at the orikis of the feminine deities, or the, I suppose, for lack of a better, let's just say feminine deities that typically are concerned with the affairs of women and children, you find that one of the qualities that they typically use to describe their energy, one of the more common ones, would be the ability to respond quickly, or sort of irking, or people who are always on alert for their children's pleas and cries. So that is sort of what it relates to. Somebody who hastens, somebody who hearkens, somebody who is fast to, you can fill in the blanks, to nurture, to respond to the child's needs. Somebody who is, at alert for being called. I don't know how to put it in the best way, but somebody who hurries, somebody who hearkens quickly, somebody who is quick to respond, and that. So it has nothing to do with, birthing children. I mean, somebody, I was reading it in one of my books yesterday, and it said, the quote was something along the lines of, having I'll see if I can find it actually. It says, having children makes you no more a parent than having a piano makes you a pianist. Michael Levine. So that you have a piano, I remember buying a guitar once, that you have a piano doesn't necessarily mean that you are a pianist, and that you have a child does not necessarily mean that you are a parent. It goes beyond that. There's a bit of training and working with what you have that qualifies you to be, what you would want to claim to be, whether a pianist if it's in the piano sense, or a parent if it's the child sense. So it's beyond the, why are you calling her Iya? Has she given birth? It has nothing to do with the birth process in and of itself, or even at all. It says something else. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. Ìyáàfin is palace, and it's a place where òfin is made. Ìyáàfin, Ìyáàfin. Essentially, it's the place that is set aside for laws to be made, or that was set aside in the past when the monarchs were the primary power holders, so to say. So it's the word òfin anyway, central to that word, Ìyáàfin, Ìyáàfin, a place where laws are made, and even òfin is not, the more you go, the more you look at it, the deeper you see. Even òfin is not necessarily law in and of itself. It is something that is supposed to perfect, so to say. You sort of have to look at words like olófin, finifin, or olófin, if, in a different dialect. Olófin, same thing. Or fini, or, to get what I'm driving. I don't even think, I think perfection is sort of what it drives at. Meticulousness, thoroughness is sort of words that you can use in relation to that fin description. So òfin will sort of be something that is intended to perfect, to put things in order. It's not necessarily law in the sense of like something that is placed on you and that you have to follow. What the word òfin is saying is quite different from that. It's more along the lines of something that perfects, something that completes, something that puts other things into perspective. Even it's not really in the something overbearing sense is what I'm driving at. Maybe that would be a separate video, because it's not just law. So, but if we were to say that it is law for the purpose of this video, I think it would be the place where laws are made, where things are put into perspective, where decisions are made, things are looked at thoroughly, So it's not even necessarily palace in and of itself. The only thing that the word palace tells me is it's a place where people who are royal stay. People who are royal and their workers or their assistants stay. That is all the word palace says to me. It doesn't really tell me what you're supposed to do in there. But the Yoruba word for Ìyáàfin sort of tells you what the ancestral expectation was for people who refer to themselves as monarchs. So there you go. Let's just say that Iya is mother or mother figure for the purpose of this video, and Ìyáàfin is palace for the purpose of this video. Iyaafin would be something along the lines of mother of the palace. Mother. So if you don't have any business with the palace, I mean, the word Mrs. isn't equivalent to person who. I'll tell you what it really means soon, but you can see that it can't possibly be madam or Mrs., can it? The word palace is not inferred in the word madam or Mrs., So why would you say Ìyáàfin is Mrs. when you can find even a better English description? Apart from Ìyáàfin, you can also hear Ìyáàfin. Ìyáàfin, that is another word that these women, typically women, would be called. Ìyáàfin. And it's, I've explained what Iya and Àfin really are. I mean, you can take mother and palace to be your translations, but not necessarily. In and of themselves, those words are telling you something else. Ni is the word that has been introduced. When you combine ni and Àfin, you get láàfin. Ni you can take to be in or at. And depending on what comes next, it could even be on. Depending on what comes next, it could be under. Ni, essentially in or at. So mother in the palace, for the purpose of this video, not necessarily mother at the palace. Mother in the palace seems to fit better. This Iyaafin used to be, or are, because they still exist, past monarchs' wives, sisters, daughters, and assistants. Most of the time. But these are a set of women, whether they live in the palace or not, or they just wake up, and they go to the palace. Especially now, they tend to be really old women. They tend to be really old just because, in modern times, things have changed anyway. So now you tend to find really, really, really old women in the Yafi positions. But basically, they are past monarchs, wives, sisters, daughters, assistants, workers, people who lived in the palace at some point, and sort of have the tea about the palace. So, or, where laws are made. I mean, let's just say palace for the purpose of this video. So they possess knowledge about the palace and past related events, often know old songs and folk tales, participate in rituals and offer prayers, provide advice, and much more. Remember, when a new king is appointed, in the past it used to be Baifa, Ifa gives the advice and recommends. Now it is the governors and the politicians that choose our kings, and so everything is a mess. But that's a discussion for another day. When a new king moves in, you know, naturally you don't just expect that they would know everything about the palace, what is done on certain days, and what that is, what this is, why this is here, you know, to keep the peace. So while workers tend to be transferred to the next monarch, so people who are whose per their lineage or per, it may not even be their lineage, but within a couple of centuries anyway, have dedicated their lives to serving the king. I mean, they would have other things that they do, but most of the time their main focus is to serve the king. Apart from them, because even with them, there's still a limit to, in certain cases, there's still a limit to what they can know or rooms they are allowed to enter. You know, these are people who used to be able to enter these rooms, were really close to past monarchs, and so they have in-depth information about why you should always do this on this day, or why you should not touch that, or why you should not say this, or why you really shouldn't wear that. That is if you seek their advice, of course. Now they're just overlooked, and I suppose a lot of new kings just see them as a nuisance, as people you just have to give money to randomly, you know, and sort of take care of when you can, as far as food and whatever is concerned. They don't necessarily see them as anything more than that. You know, they are Christians and Muslims now, they don't care. But these women possess that is why they tend to come and stay in the palace, even when they're older, and really there's not much to do, because they know so much, and so they are so useful to the palace. They can tell you all that you need to know. You know, when it's prayer time, they can participate, they can sing the songs, they can do everything. So they are really, really important. If you're not that kind of person, if you're not somebody who possesses any deep knowledge about, you know, things that used to happen in the palace, or things that happened, maybe one-offs, and how to manage those, you shouldn't really refer to yourself as a yafi, you know. So how do you then say Mrs.? Because it's not how do you then say, I mean, you want to introduce yourself as, you know, Mrs. something. So what's the best way to go about doing that? I told you in the video that I dedicated to last names, that at some point last names were not even a thing. You were, whether you were Omo, whatever the first name of your, you know, parent is. So this Omo, that, the first name of your parent, whether father or mother. I went to it in depth, but it's not, in the past, you didn't really need a last name to function. It was when the British officials came and it was, oh, we are going to train this few. I was saying it at some point that, you know, our parents and grandparents were sort of brainwashed into being grateful for what the British did, as if they contributed to sort of be grateful for colonization. But some of the things that they did, they had to do for their own benefit. So to create hospitals and to create schools and all that, they needed people to work for them, so they had to train them. You know, it wasn't necessarily because they loved us so much that they created schools. Some of them were just brainwash centers. You know, they tell you that Mungo Park discovered the river Niger, and they don't tell you about what happened to your to the people that were taken out of Africa and what eventually became of them. You know, and it's sort of a very, as a matter of fact, those curriculums still exist till now. So you find a lot of people who are very educated in Nigeria, but a lot of them still very ignorant, because they are not, the initial curriculums were not created to really make them, it's just so that they can function for the I mean, this was pre-independence, and even after, just so they could function for the British government, just so they could function for them, you know. So there's lots of brainwash. But anyway, let's leave that aside. Until then, until we became, sign this, what is your last name? Or do that, what is your last name? When we had British prime ministers ruling present day Nigeria, before then it really didn't matter. So let's say that this person is Olawale, and Adéfúnnké is the person who is married to this Olawale. Let's look at it. How would Adéfúnnké refer to herself if she wants to say Mrs. in court, if she wants to let everybody know that she's married now? Typically, people would just go Olawale Oko Adéfúnnké when referring to, I mean, this was a long time ago. This is how you didn't necessarily have to say Oko this. It was good if you were going to describe in certain settings, but Baba Olawale would have been fine, or Iya Adéfúnnké would have been fine. If you wanted, you would have said Aya Olawale, you know. This is the video that I'm referring to. Last names, root history and significance, Yoruba people of Nigeria. So this is the video I'm referring to. Anyway, I will put it here somewhere so that you can find it. After last names were introduced, then it became, Olawale Ajadi. And I told you how people got their last names in that video. Olawale Ajadi. Let's say that's his name now. It is 1940 or 1950, and this is how this person would refer to themselves. And Adéfúnnké Ifatade, this would be the surname, you know. Except like singers are praising the men or whatever, it's really not that common for people to say, Olawale Ajadi Oko Adéfúnnké. You know, you wouldn't hear that Oko that often, except like maybe, musicians are performing and they are, singing the praises of the man or something. Then they mention his wife. Sometimes they mention the name of his children. It's just not that common in the day-to-day life. But for a woman who wants to refer to it, to let people know anyway that she's married to the family of the Ajadis, the husband's last name, then she would have to remove her own last name, and go by Adéfúnnké Aya Ajadi. So they can say Iya Adéfúnnké Aya Ajadi. That works for Mrs. Ajadi, Mrs. Adéfúnnké Ajadi. That works, as opposed to Ìyáàfin. It's very disrespectful. There are lots of things that we do now that are very disrespectful. That it just shows, I think, that British arrogance of, your culture is rubbish anyway, has sort of been transferred to the newer generation. There are lots of rude things that are done, like people wearing the inu, the leke, that kings, that's, the types anyway, the types that are intended for kings only, or people holding the irukere. You see a lot of people when they get married now, you think they are from the royal family, and they really are not. And they use the traditional ones too. There are some that are sort of like plastic and are not really intended to imitate the kings. But there are people who, so yeah, some would even use the irukere. And it's not just the kings that would have used the irukere then, but you just find anybody, and there are just certain or people even wearing crowns. Don't be surprised, there are lots of them in the US and in different parts who now refer to themselves as Oba this and Oba that when they were never even crowned. I think those are the worst. They just wake up one day and decide they want to be chief this, or they wake up one day and they decide they want to be Oba of Houston or Oba of Maryland when nobody really crowned them. And they dress like kings, they act like kings, but they really are not. I think it's very disrespectful. Adéfúnnké Aya Ajadi is how Adéfúnnké would refer to herself as Mrs. So, Iya Adéfúnnké Aya Ajadi works for Mrs. Ajadi. It's not Ìyáàfin Àjàdí or Ìyáàfin Adéfúnnké Àjàdí. No, no, no. So you would say Baba Olawale Àjàdí for him, or Ìyá Adéfúnnké Aya Àjàdí for her. This is the correct way to say Mrs. So it would be the first name and then Aya, the last name. That's the proper way to say Mrs. Not Ìyáàfin, not Ìyálóde. Adéfúnnké Àjàdí. The role of the Ìyálóde is not the Madam or Mrs. role. It goes beyond that. And so I think don't disrespect your own self. I think at some point and to some degree we've all been taught the European arrogance, directly or indirectly, that sort of maybe not necessarily encourages us, but tells us that it's okay to disrespect certain aspects of our own culture. Let's not do that anymore. Let's not do that. Let's not call ourselves Ìyálóde when we really are not, and Ìyálọ́jà when we really are not, and Olórí when we really are not. You find a lot of king's wives calling themselves Olórí, and it's so funny because the role of the Olórí is not it's somewhat similar to the Iyaafin role as well. It's not just because you've been married into the home of a king that you automatically become an Olórí. At that point you are Ayaba. The Aya is not wife, but let's just say it's wife for the purpose of translate. I think if we start to really look at words in and of themselves, Yoruba words, we will be so angry because we're so used to this convenient, just slap something onto it and call it the translation. But, wife is a good translation too. Wife of the king, if wife of the king, or wife of the Oba is not king, but if it's a man, I suppose king would be a good translation. The wife of the king, you're not necessarily an Olórí yet. There's a level of training that you would undergo. There's a level of awareness. There are lots of events that you would have to participate in. There's a lot to know before you become an Olórí. You may become one. You may not become one. It's not an automatic thing. If you're not already aware of certain things that happen, and you've not participated in certain things with the king, you're not aware of certain things yet, you're not yet an Olórí. You're not in the position where you can guide Ayabas yet. So that's that about that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope that my software would be back to its normal self, but if not, then yikes. I suppose there would be one more of this kind of teaching until I find an alternative. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye for now.
Ogun àjùmọ̀jọba àwárí jẹ́ nílé ìdálódò Yemọja ó sá bàbá mi Àrẹ̀mú ní Kálódò Ògún àjùmọ̀jọba Yemọja ó jẹ́ abẹ́lúdò láì pọ́n mi.